All right. All
Sorry?
right. It started going live in the middle of your statement, according to
Oh,
the.
okay. Never mind. I can always slice off this first bit within YouTube. But yeah,
Good
so
morning.
another future day conversation. How you doing?
Pretty good. Pretty good. Too busy as usual.
Yes, that's always. I can always expect you to be very busy, Ben. So, like it's been another year, 3 years since the first future day in 2012. My has time flied, and what's happened in between?
Yeah, a lot of things happen each year. As we knew 3 years ago when we launched Future Day, change is accelerating dramatically. I've noticed that myself in that 3 years ago, I started writing a book on AGI for a non-technical audience. When I revisited the manuscript a couple months ago with a view toward finally getting it published and putting it out there, I realized just how much had gone obsolete in 2 or 3 years' time. I mean,
Mhm.
10 years ago, you could have written a manuscript on AI, let it sit 2 or 3 years, and then it would be
Mhm.
about the same thing.
Mhm.
Now, 3 years have passed. I mean, I had to write a new chapter on deep learning, as there's been a whole explosion of deep learning research and investment
Mhm.
since then. And even in OpenCog, we've got a whole bunch of interesting stuff working that we were only daydreaming about 3 years ago. So yeah, it's an interesting time to be working toward bringing about a more amazing future.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's interesting. I mean, I had a conversation with Philippe George at AGI 13, and it is amazing what can be done with deep learning there. But what are you guys doing at OpenCog at the moment, which is new and fresh that people might not yet know about, might not be on their radar?
Well, we're working on a bunch of different things. I mean, here in Hong Kong, most of our effort is on natural language dialogue, working toward making OpenCog able to hold a reasonable English conversation, and there's still a bunch more work there. We're also prototyping some toy robots, so we want to make a robot like this tall that can see and walk around and talk to you, and we've been monkeying around with the modifying current robots by adding cameras and microphones and so on, and then doing the software work to connect those to OpenCog. So that's been fun for me because I'm more of a software guy. So I've been learning a lot about robot hardware and working together with David Hansen and Mark Tilden, who are some world-class roboticists based here in Hong
Mhm.
Kong. That's been a lot of fun. On the pure AI side, actually, we've been making some cool progress in applying OpenCog to biology data. So, as you know, one of the core ideas underlying OpenCog is merging together different AI methods on the same knowledge base to get some kind of synergetic intelligence. So we've been taking patterns recognized using Moses, an evolutionary learning algorithm, on biology data sets regarding long-lived organisms, regarding the gene expression and the single nucleotide polymorphisms in long-lived organisms. Taking the results you get from applying Moses as a machine learning algorithm to these genetic data sets, feeding the results of Moses into OpenCog's atom space knowledge representation, and then using OpenCog's probabilistic reasoning algorithms to combine the results of Moses with ideas and from various biology databases that have been sucked into OpenCog. So putting together Moses as a pattern recognition algorithm and then PLN as a logical reasoning algorithm to derive new conclusions in the context of biology. And that's interesting in terms of the biological conclusions we're finding, but also
Wow.
interesting also interesting methodologically, just in terms of the first time we've gotten Moses and PLN working together in a non-trivial way, where the PLN logic engine is reasoning on the internals of the models learned via Moses. So that's just one little piece out of a lot of different things going
Well,
on.
what you've just said, like, bridges together two of the very interesting, factors in the future, and that's AI, or that's just, machine automation, intelligent optimization, and also the longevity and the regenerative medicine aspects of the future. And look, it brings to mind Epic of Gilgamesh. I mean, we've been sort of wanting for a better future since the dawn of recorded history. Epic, this poor Gilgamesh guy didn't make it. He didn't find his elixir of eternal life. Yet, it seems as though we're making progress today, and yeah, we can peep through time and get a glimpse of the future, and we can see possibilities for radical life extension and regenerative medicine not too far away. So yeah, I think that's pretty interesting stuff. I mean,
Yeah, it's
yeah.
also interesting the way modern communication technology lets this kind of work happen globally. So this particular work is, I mean, it's being funded by a company in California called Stevia First, whose main line of business is making stevia more efficiently using biochemistry, but they're also interested in longevity research. And the AI guys working on this are a couple guys in the U.S., in New York and Vermont, a biologist and a couple programmers in Ethiopia, in Addis Ababa, where we have an AI lab there, ICOG Labs. Then the work on Moses has largely been done by someone based in France, and then the probabilistic logic aspect has been done in Hong Kong by an Ethiopian guy who was transferred here to our Hong Kong office. So we're really pulling this together with a massively distributed effort. And I mean, the data we've been looking at is also from all over the place. I mean, the long-lived fly data from Ganeshan is playing some role in our work, which is flies living 4 times as long as normal flies, created by 30 years of experimental evolution by Michael Rose at University of California, Irvine. Then we've been analyzing supercentenarian data that was published by Stuart Kim at Stanford University. But these supercentenarians, people age 105 or over, have been, I mean, they've been studied over a period of time. And these are people who live all over the world. And it's because when Stuart Kim's group published that paper, they posted the raw data from their experiments on the internet, which allowed us to download that data, and after a lot of work, analyze ourselves and see how that connects with other things. For example, it connects with João Pedro Magalhães, his work, a Portuguese guy based in the UK, his work looking at the DNA of the naked mole rat, which was sequenced by someone else as an extraordinarily long-lived organism. Now, he in the UK, transplanted from Portugal, sequencing the naked mole rat data, found a bunch of peculiarities in mitochondrial function, which is similar to what you find in long-lived fly data and in supercentenarian data. So what you see, what Francis Halligan would call this, is the activity of the global brain, right? He's a friend of mine who runs the Global Brain Institute in the Free University of Brussels. He would say each one of us is just a neuron in the global overall intelligent process that's emerging. And, some of the neurons may fire a little better than others, or maybe better positioned to make a difference in what the overall global brain does. But what you can see is a broadly distributed process where different people are doing different things. They're sharing the information online in various ways, and all the pieces are coming together, and which is an aspect I've thought about a lot lately, due to the fact that OpenCog and my own AI work and all of my work is open source as much as I can make it. I mean, one thing we've seen AI happening. One thing we've seen happening with AI in the last couple of years is it's increasingly being bought up by large corporations.
Mm.
I mean, you have one after another academic AI researcher and one after another small company gobbled up by Google, Facebook, Microsoft, and whatnot. And I can't say this is bad because these companies are deploying massive resources to advance AI, which is generically is a good thing, and they're making new discoveries. And even if the new discoveries remain siloed inside these companies for a while, eventually employees leave, products get disseminated, and ideas gradually filter through the world, even if they begin in that context. But I'm happy there's also some work still going on in the truly open domain. I mean, not just our lab in Ethiopia. Since starting that and doing some publicity for it, I get so many emails from people throughout Africa and the Middle East. You're like, we're in Morocco, we're in Iran, we're in Egypt doing AI. We're inspired by the fact that you're doing this stuff in Ethiopia. How can we set up an AGI lab in our city or our country? So I can see, it's great the Googles of the world are putting a bunch of funding into doing their own proprietary AI, but the global brain aspect also merits some thought because there's a lot of people all over who want to put their own neuron cycles into becoming better neurons in the global brain as the global brain thinks its way toward the singularity. And that kind of brings us back to the point of Future Day, because I always thought of Future Day not just as about celebrating, wow, the future is getting better and better, but thinking about what we can do ourselves to advance toward a better and better future. And I think that's something everyone should recognize, like the amazing future with essential immortality and superhuman AIs doing all the annoying work, and all of us frolicking in virtual realities up in the sky. I mean, this isn't necessarily something that Google is going to build for us and provide for us via our iPhone version 45 or something. I mean, this is something that everyone is building and creating together, and we can't necessarily trust any big corporation or any government to do it right and then distribute it to everyone in a fair and appropriate way. I think. I mean, this is something the world has to do collectively, not just me, not just Google, not just anyone. And much of the thinking underlying Future Day was to get everyone, in particular the younger generation, but everyone enthused to actually contribute to making a better future.
Well, I think one of the phenomenons around is the maker movement. It's got a lot of grassroots support for it, and does seem to be being applied to, I guess, industry standard like application these days, and it's something a lot of people are excited about.
Yeah, I'd say that's, my own background is in mathematics and then software. So, I mean, open source software has been around a while, but the advent of open source hardware and new plans for new kinds of machines being put online, and the enabling of people to build sort of whatever they want by 3D printing and then wiring things together using openly available plans. I mean, this is all new and it is very exciting, and that's something that's exploding here. I mean, not so much in Hong Kong where I'm sitting, but in Shenzhen, right across the border. That's the world center of consumer electronics manufacturing. But there's also a huge, startup hardware incubator scene and a huge maker movement in Shenzhen. And there's nowhere that's better for cobbling together your own parts to build your own stuff at low cost. And we've seen that ourselves with the robotics stuff we're doing. What we did is buy buy some Robo Sapien toy robots, which are like $50 in Toys R Us. Then we have an engineer from India who's now based here in Hong Kong. He made a plan to put a couple cameras, some microphones, a gyroscope, and Arduino in each of these Robo Sapiens. Now, with parts that you can buy for say $250 on Taobao, the Chinese eBay within mainland China, you can turn one of these Robo Sapiens into a robotic user interface for an AI system, which can do everything that a $2,500 now robot can do. And now to buy those parts in Hong Kong would cost 3 times as much. To buy them in the US, maybe 5 times as much. So you see there that China has a cheaper and better ecosystem for buying hardware. But of course, even if it's $700 instead of $200 to buy the parts, the basic point still holds. And if we want to modify the physical case, the plastic case around the Robo Sapien, there's loads of nice 3D printers at Hong Kong PolyU campus, which we can use in our case free of charge because we have a lab on the campus. So you can just CAD something in SolidWorks or whatever and print out a new head for your robot, right? And I mean that's. Of course, you could always do that at a higher cost for the last several decades, but the fact that you can do that now, basically in an afternoon's work in a university lab, free of charge, that wasn't true 5 years ago, and it's now boring to the young people, right? You're like, oh, we have 3D printers here. They're like, yeah, we did that in our design class, right? I got a B on my project. That's not interesting at all. But to me, since I'm old and didn't grow up with a 3D printer in my university, it's still kind of cool. I mean, there's still a way to go. Like what we can do now with 3D printing and low-cost components, we can build a kick-ass prototype. If we want to build 1 million of these, it's still a matter of going to traditional factories across the border in China. But that's become more systematized now too, just due to the sort of the global brain's own self-organizing processes. Like there's a host of English-speaking guys you can go to here in Hong Kong, give them your prototype. They'll take it to 10 different factories in China and mediate the process of getting them to build the different parts and assemble them all together from sub-assemblies and manufacture them. So even where things are not fully automated, the sort of human processes of getting things done have become much lower cost and lower time than they used to be. And this is a extremely fast accelerating area. I mean, because there's a lot of money in it, right? I mean, consumer electronics in Shenzhen is huge. I mean, one of the things that has been concerning me lately, due to spending time in Ethiopia working with the guys there, is just, I mean, once consumer electronics and robots advance and can do all the work, then, I mean, with the world's current economic system, that's not very good for the mass of people in sub-Saharan Africa, for example, who's, I mean, they don't have money to buy these robots. They can't afford a $150 robot for that matter. That may be 3 times their monthly salary if you're working in a blue-collar job in most of Africa. So I think there is a risk that if the current socioeconomic system remains as it is and technology develops extremely fast, then you're going to have an untenable situation because robots are going to take over manual labor, and people who are trained only at manual labor, what are they going to do, right? So I mean, I think the global brain may provide a solution to this. What we're doing with ICOG in Ethiopia could be a small part of the solution. I mean, the solution is open up the communication and education channels as much as you can, so that people in these places have incentives to become educated and skilled, so as to join the modern economy. I mean, a plus is that these parts of the world are very young. I mean, just demographically. So a substantial part of the population is people who are still in a phase of life where they feel like learning new stuff and doing new stuff and you know exploring new horizons. So there's
What do you think of
certainly
the notion?
hope,
What do you think of the
there, but go on.
What do you think of the notion of universal guaranteed basic income?
Well,
Then, like, is it a,
so far as I know, no wealthy country is offering to provide a universal basic income to the citizens of, for example, the Central African Republic. I mean, I think that ultimately that almost has to happen, right? I mean, the only real options are everyone dies or there's some sort of universal income because the way things are going, eventually robots are going to make everything. So what's going to happen? There's going to be like 1,000 rich guys who own all the robots, which make luxury goods for their own entertainment, and then everyone else just starves out in the streets because the robots have paved over all the forests to make new factories to make Louis Vuitton luggage and caviar for the 1,000 remaining people. I mean,
oh, God.
that's ultimately what would happen without some basic guaranteed income, because as technology advances, people will no longer be the most efficient way to make stuff, but there's just too many people for us to all go back and become savages and pick fruit from the trees, right? So I think that's the direction things are going almost inevitably, but the fact that something is almost inevitable doesn't make the human race any better at accepting it. It doesn't necessarily smooth the pathway toward getting there, right? I mean, you could say the same thing with simpler stuff, like in the 1950s and 60s in the U.S., you could say equal rights for black people was inevitable, right? I mean, once dishwashers and birth control and all these technologies came about, you could say equality for women was almost inevitable. But yet, there's decades of struggles and fighting to make this happen. Just like the fall of North Korea is almost inevitable. That dictatorship has got to collapse. It's going to reunify with South Korea. But the inevitable, even though everyone can see what's going to happen, takes a while to happen, partly because of a few people in a powerful position who resist it because it's not in their interest, and partly just because of the inertia of human social networks and each person being a little conservative and preserving their own self-interest a bit and being afraid of change. So I think that the guaranteed income has got to be what happens, unless you have a Terminator scenario or some other outlandishly bad outcome. But the path to get there from here, at the moment, is not all that clear. You can see the path to getting there within Western Europe, for example, or within Japan. The path to getting there globally seems substantially more difficult at present, but maybe in 10 or 15 years it will seem clearer.
And that's another reason for Future Day. I mean, like, as the rising generations and, the generations currently in the workforce, they have a ritualized focus on the future that will, I think, contribute, maybe in some small way, at least, to them becoming less fearful of the future and more accepting and more aware and more cognizant of the various possible futures that are available.
Yeah. Well,
yeah. Let's hope so.
Yeah. So, and anyhow, the increasing awareness around the world of these sorts of ideas is dramatic and is exciting. I mean, as I've said a couple times before, 5-10 years ago, if I told people I was working on building thinking machines, 90% would say I'm crazy. Now half of them say, well, why are you bothering? Like, Google's already doing it, right? I mean, the ideas are out there to a much more dramatic degree. I mean, even on my recent visit to Ethiopia, we put some little robots out in the street just for random kids to play with, and most of them had never played with a robot before. They thought it was cool, but they knew what a robot was. Like they'd seen them in science fiction movies, like from the internet somewhere or other, right? And of course, at the university there, every student in engineering and computer science and technology is familiar with all the same amazing new technologies you and I are familiar with. I mean, they may not know if they'll ever get a chance to work with them. I mean, they may never have worn an Oculus or shaken hands with a robot, but they've seen videos on YouTube of people doing these things. So the spreading of awareness about these ideas has been incredible, and we don't yet know what's going to happen with a generation who grew up with the idea that all these things are plausibly part of their future is running the world. I mean, that may end up making a substantial difference, because the world is substantially a gerontocracy, right? I mean, I'm 48 years old. I'm much younger than most people who are controlling the resources in the world, and most of those people grew up before there was an internet, before robots could do hardly anything. Certainly before you had major companies putting vast wealth into longevity and immortality. So now that we have a generation growing up where the singularity-focused future is almost the new common sense, it's quite interesting to think what's going to happen when this generation is running things. I mean, things should be quite different than now. And you see that in China more than anywhere. Like the young generation has a vastly different mindset than the generation currently in power. And the young generation is not that interested in politics necessarily, but they're very interested in advanced technology and its transformative potential. In January and February in Beijing, we had 3 different singularity conferences, bringing thousands of people, including leaders from government and industry. So it was never just in Silicon Valley, although some media might have made you think so. But now it's even more dramatic that these ideas are spreading all around the world.
Absolutely. Look, I wanted to just briefly, at least, touch on some of the interesting, I guess, medical style technologies that have been coming about, like, this whole, like, pickling sort of procedure that you can go through, that you can put someone in suspended animation, clinically dead, in a sense, like fuzzing the previously defined boundaries between life and non-life, putting poor gunshot victims under, like, pickle, whatever, such that the doctors have enough time to perform operations that would normally they would not normally have the time to do. And now it's like you can do it for about 2 to 4 hours. Maybe in the future we'll be able to do it for 5, 10, maybe even in 10 years, 25 years, we'll be able to do it for a whole day. And that this sort of stuff is, and then reanimating these patients, right? They end up being alive, and the same people they were before they went under. This is quite new. So yeah, that's quite interesting. The artificial hearts.
I mean, I don't know much about that. I mean, I've read the same articles as you. I don't know too much about that in particular, but I would say that the breadth of new technologies is amazing, and there's so much, as I said at the start of this conversation. I mean, when someone writes a book about the amazing new technologies that have come out, by the time the book is published, the book is half obsolete because there's been so many new amazing things. I mean, I was in a totally different area. I was just looking at some research articles from IEEE transactions on nanosystems, nanotechnology. And there's all the new results on how to do precise positioning of molecules by grabbing things with tiny little fingers, or rather by taking one tiny little finger and moving it so fast it can grab the same thing from multiple positions at once. So I mean, which is a whole other area. Like Eric Drexler was writing about that decades ago, but now, I mean, month by month, there's more and more progress toward being able to do like precise atomic scale positioning of molecules from a nanomanufacturing perspective. Of course, we're still not there to the molecular assembly yet, but you remember a couple of decades ago, there was a guy named Smalley who was associated with George W. Bush government, and he was debating with Drexler, like, is this nonsense? Could the laws of physics ever allow this, right? And the U.S. government was almost like decreeing that nanotechnology would be impossible because God wouldn't let us pick up very small things. I mean, much like in the urban legend where the state of Alabama legislated that pi equals 3.14, right? And then, I mean, of course, now, not that much later, no government would think to have that argument because you've got, these IEEE journals that are right now routinely publishing papers by researchers from labs all over the world, doing what this guy Smalley was telling Drexler was impossible not all that long ago. So yeah, you look at suspended animation, nanotechnology. I mean, you could run the gamut of futurist technologies, and there's something happening. I mean, we saw in the paper, not even a paper anymore. You can see I'm old. We saw on Google News yesterday. There are two companies formed to try to commercialize Elon Musk's Hyperloop, like super fast transportation technology. One was formed as a sort of crowdsourced company, which is now going to be going public. So, I mean, the combination of different futuristic memes there is quite striking, right? And of course, things are still much slower than I would like relative to my own aging human body. Because for me, I mean, if a singularity takes 50 years to come instead of 20 years, that means something personally. Like, I may not be alive then. I may have to be reanimated from a cryopreserved form or something else, or I might get hit by a truck and not survive to see it all. But I mean, on the grand scope of things, you have to be blind not to see how dramatically all these different technologies and patterns of social organization and communication are converging. And of course, this is being done by all of us, just like the thought occurring in my brain now is occurring by hundreds of billions of neurons, each contributing to the overall activation pattern. And yeah, there's a lot to do and a lot to learn. Actually, there's no way not to fall behind now, which is quite disturbing and exciting at the same time. Right? Like there's no way to keep up. There's no way to keep up with anything anymore. You've just got to pick the corners where you can know a lot and try to keep up with those. As my friend David Hansen, the roboticist, says, it's not about preventing the chaos. It's more about surfing the chaos and finding the right spot to ride it.
Well, I guess, do you hold any hope for the various brain projects around? Do you think they'll help contribute knowledge-wise to any of the projects that you're interested in?
I don't think that the current brain projects are going to contribute much in a direct way to AI. Of course, they're contributing to understanding and modeling the brain, which is really cool and very important. I tend to think we'll need a huge breakthrough in brain imaging in order to really understand what the brain is doing. We need to be able to make a three-dimensional movie of what's happening in the brain. We need a brain imaging technology with high spatial and temporal resolution, and we don't have that. And until we have that, I don't think we're going to have a breakthrough in terms of understanding the dynamics of thought inside the brain. On the other hand, I mean, we're having an exciting gradual accumulation of knowledge about what happens inside the brain, and as with all science, we don't know exactly where it's going to lead, and I mean, we also don't know where the breakthrough is going to happen. So I mean, throwing all this money at smart neuroscientists around the world can't be wrong, right? I mean, as opposed to throwing it to making Rolex watches or more chocolatey chocolates or the usual things that society wastes its money on. So I mean, I think it's good. I'm a little skeptical that Markram's Human Brain Project in Europe is going to proceed as planned and meet its articulated goals. But there's so many genius researchers and so many well-instrumented labs being funded there that something cool is going to come out of it, right? So that gets back to surfing the chaos, right? To me, the important thing isn't even the specific research programs that have been funded. It's the fact that governments are directing resources to pay smart people to work on fundamental research in how the brain works and in modeling how the brain works, and instead of just working on shorter term, narrower-minded commercial goals. So that's certainly important, and I hope that happens more and more, because I mean, to my mind, you know, if I were running the world, I would devote vastly more money to R&D on all these fantastic topics, and to including people from every corner of the globe in this R&D with a view towards bootstrapping knowledge in every corner of the world. And in hindsight, the fact that on the verge of the singularity, so little of our effort as a species goes into pushing these technologies forward and disseminating them to everybody. I mean, this will seem strange and shocking in retrospect. I think that we were running around obsessed with a sort of trivial aspects of self-entertainment when so many amazing things are on the horizon. But yet, you know, even though things could go much better and much faster if the human race orient itself differently, it's amazing how well and how quickly they're going anyway.
Mm-hmm. Have you done any reading or research into CRISPR technologies? You've heard of CRISPR, right?
I mean, I know what it is. Yeah, I mean, DNA editing. It's very cool. I mean, this is going to be one of the ways that the biological discoveries made by myself and my colleagues and our other analogs and other research projects. I mean, it's one of the ways that the discoveries AI makes when analyzing genomics data can be turned into therapies, right? Because I mean, what we're doing now with AI and genomics can tell you, like, these 20 genes are important for longevity in this type of person, or these 30 genes acting together are critical for Parkinson's disease. But then what do you do with that knowledge, right? I mean, targeting the genes with small molecules, as happens in the traditional drug industry, is very crude. So CRISPR is one among a host of new technologies that can let you more directly leverage these sort of genomics discoveries to make therapies, and that's quite exciting. Hey, I've got to run. Unfortunately, I've got a meeting about actually our hedge fund project idea, which is another area where technology is transforming things. I'm confident in 10 years, you know, it'll be AIs trading in the financial markets, not people. So I'm hoping to make $1 billion during that transition using my own AIs to trade the markets. Then I'll keep a few $100 million for my kids and my family, and put all the rest into the maybe just a few million. We can put all the rest into advanced technology. I'll even give you a couple dollars out of it.
Thanks. Yeah, give me a tip. I'll have a tip jar by then. I'll probably need it too.
No, I mean, I think the financial markets are already being transformed by AI, and I think we're hoping that we can use machine learning to make a very successful fund on U.S. equities and global futures. And then, in seriousness, any money that I were lucky enough to make from this sort of enterprise, I would plow into research on AGI, life extension, nanotech, femtotech, and any other kind of futuristic technology that seemed promising. I mean, I think accumulating wealth is a very boring thing to do these days, but if we could concentrate some wealth using AI on the markets and deploy that to advanced technology and to spread advanced technology throughout the world, that would be great. I mean, it's happening anyway, but every little boost we can give counts, and that's again my message on Future Day is amazing stuff is happening, more and more amazing stuff year by year, and it's happening because all of us are making it happen, and we shouldn't sink into the idea that we're caught up in some inevitable wave of progress, so we might as well just relax and enjoy the ride. I mean, there's truth to that, but as Niels Bohr, the pioneer of quantum mechanics, said, he said the definition of a great truth is that its opposite is also a great truth. It underlies the notion of complementarity in quantum mechanics, and I think that applies here. I mean, yes, there's an inevitable wave of progress. We're all swept up in it, but the complement to that great truth is all this is happening because we are making it happen. And if people stop trying, then it would stop happening, and we would have a calamity. It's out of our own choices and our own efforts that this inevitable wave of progress exists, and both of those complementary perspectives are there, and we need to act based on both of them.
Fantastic. Well, it's wonderful having you on the channel again, the show. So yeah, Future Day, everybody, is March the 1st. If you've got some plans to hold a Future Day this year or in future years, let us know. Yeah, so looking forward to the next one. Cheers,
all right,
man.
talk to you later, Adam. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.